This week on Arizona Illustrated, celebrating George Brookbank, the master of Southwest gardening. Meet the man who introduced Tucson to itself, Big Jim Griffith. Reminiscing with a Green Valley resident who beat the skins for Chet Baker. And traffic control 80s style from the vault. Welcome to Arizona Illustrated. I'm Tom McNamara. To become a master gardener, one typically completes intense home horticulture training. Well, that hardly describes the depth of knowledge and experience possessed by the subject of our next story. A gentleman who has certainly mastered gardening in the Southwest, and more importantly, how to spread a love for it to his fellow man, George Brookbank.
Gardening is undergoing a modern-day revival, a nature-based renaissance in our fast-paced world for those who are seeking a closer connection to their food and the soil from which it grows. But there's a person in southern Arizona who has been addressing this subject for decades. Local food, sustainability, and healthier eating habits have been personal passions all of his life, long before the current wave of attention.
Oh my heavens, he's irreplaceable. I would say he's green wisdom, gardening wisdom.
I think he's an incredible treasure. I think he's vastly important to the community.
He's been a dear friend and has lots of wonderful seeds of kindness that he plants as much as vegetables.
We've been a member of the garden for, 4 or 5 years, and we bought our seeds that long ago. And are they still any good?
Well, I don't know. And you don't know either.
Right.
So you have to find out.
George Brookbank is an admired horticulturist who has been sharing his love of plants and animals since he was a little boy, and he has had that opportunity on 3 different continents.
Good luck.
Born in England in 1925, Brookbank moved to East Africa after high school. For 11 years, he lived in what is now Tanzania, where he worked with local populations on growing crops and raising animals that could provide sustenance and cash.
I joined the Colonial Agricultural Service, and that got me a passage to one of the colonies.
After his time in Africa, he traveled west to California with his American wife.
And I got a master's degree in horticulture. And when I had that, I felt I was qualified to apply for a salaried position.
He was hired in Yuma, Arizona, but he moved again in 1972. He accepted a position in urban horticulture with the University of Arizona's Extension Service. Nearly 2 decades later, Brookbank and other committed residents established Community Gardens of Tucson. These urban plots provide a green oasis where participants can get close to nature and reap the fruits of their labor.
The first one was on First Avenue, which now houses Sprouts and LA Fitness. Our plots were right under there, and that was in 1990. And then it grew one by one as people paid dues in that when we had enough money to open another and another and another.
I would like to say that we formed a good partnership and we achieved our objective in helping people become more self-sufficient, growing food, and I feel good about that.
Here is a nice little plant. It's unusual. It's a native plant, and it's drought tolerant.
Throughout the years, Brookbank has kept a steady presence in southern Arizona. He has used the power of television and other media to educate and inspire, addressing topics in a friendly fashion for amateurs and experts alike.
And that's where the papaya fruit sits. Papayas are male or female plants, and we don't have any males, unfortunately, so perhaps nothing will happen here.
Brookbank is also the author of several books and many articles about gardening in the desert.
He's an educator first, a good listener and a good teacher.
Funny enough, I have a colleague that just moved here from Tennessee, and I was updating my address book, and I said, "What's your address?" He said, "Oh, it's on George Brookbank Drive in Vail." I said, "That name sounds awfully familiar." So I guess George is a little bit more of a celebrity than we really knew.
I can remember having a garden when I was little, and my sisters had gardens. Every house we were in a garden. Always been involved in animals and gardening.
Although he retired in the 1990s, George Brookbank continues to make the rounds, where he cultivates the gardening culture.
And he even now still goes to some of the community gardens on their monthly meetings and offers his wisdom and his good cheer, and he's a wonderful, wonderful man.
George, I just found a bright yellow grasshopper on my corn. Should I worry or should I just leave it alone?
I think what you should do is to pick it off with your finger and thumb. Put it on the ground and jump on it.
That's what I was afraid of.
He's taught a lot of people about gardening, but I'm a terrible gardener, so I thought bees would be a better place for us to connect.
It's a nice full thing.
Oh, good.
That one looks really good.
He is incredibly knowledgeable. He's probably the kindest person I know. He's a very generous man with his knowledge, and he'll give you the shirt off his back, actually. It wouldn't fit, but, you know, he would do it.
Despite his many achievements and accolades, Brookbank remains humble and philosophical. He says he's been inspired by watching the rewarding interactions between nature and people.
I just think that I am doing something worthwhile, and people think I'm doing it worthwhile, and that gives me safe satisfaction. And I just like looking back on seeing the progress that I and they have done.
Dr. James S. Griffith is a renowned folklorist, scholar, author, teacher, researcher, television personality, a National Endowment for the Arts Heritage Fellow, and the co-founder of the Tucson Meet Yourself Folk Life Festival. But it's his deeply personal approach towards understanding the diverse cultures of the Southwest and his professional commitment to respectfully and accurately sharing that knowledge that makes him warmly recognized throughout Southern Arizona as Big Jim.
If someone were to ask you to define your community, to describe the place you call home and explain its flavor and character, you might mention the local environment and its landscape, different neighborhoods and their styles of architecture, and popular attractions that provide identity and color.
You want to hear the whole story? Of course, it was a good story then, it's a good story now.
For cultural anthropologist James Griffith, these attributes also provide a sense of place. But what best defines a community or region for him are its people, their stories, and their traditions. Griffith is a modern-day folklorist.
And that was all we needed.
Oh, wow.
Well, I didn't always know what to call it, but I'm interested in the stuff that's got depth and roots and genealogy and history, creativity, beauty. All those kinds of things. This is what's always interested me.
La Llorona, the weeping woman, could conceivably be in this area. Tucson was founded by guys like this, soldados de cuera, leather jacket soldiers. This particular Southern Arizona tradition is also an ancient Mexican tradition.
James Griffith, Ph.D., is much better known as Big Jim Griffith. He is 6 feet 7 inches tall and a compelling figure in the world of Sonoran desert culture. It is more than an interest, actually. It is a passion that spans several decades.
There are dozens of stories. Hot off the comal.
For more than 20 years, Big Jim Griffith hosted Southern Arizona Traditions on KUAT's Arizona Illustrated, addressing topics such as history, food, and people's narratives. Along the way, he acknowledged and saluted a segment of the population that has been here for centuries, yet was frequently in the background.
Fully half of the people who came up and talked to me about how they liked the segments did so in Spanish. A lot of working class Mexicanos watched KUAT. So it struck me that one thing I was doing as a favor for that population is showing public respect, enjoyment, and appreciation for regional culture, and in this particular case, Mexican culture.
Una viejita, ¿verdad? Sale una viejita haciendo tortillas, pero así las tortillas.
Well, for me, he's always been inspiration in the way that he treats people. You know, I like the way he treats people. I like the way he gets along with people, and I think he's a really good ambassador for Tucson and the Sonora Desert in general.
I've seen experiences with everyday people who may not have otherwise been validated for the work that they do, and I think validation is something that's really incredibly important.
And that has always impressed me about him is the authenticity of his relationship with the people that he studied and served and documented. And they love him for that authenticity. They know that it comes from the heart.
When you're talking about Southern Arizona traditions, be sure to include the Itoiki.
I think Jim has been, for the man in the street, for the regular people of Tucson, someone who has interpreted all of our customs to us.
We're at one of Tucson's most interesting places as far as I'm concerned. It's right at the corner.
In addition to the segments on television, Big Jim has also attended thousands of festivals, lectures, and other events, and he has written countless articles and books. In 1974, he co-founded Tucson Meet Yourself. The annual gathering of more than 100,000 people is a cause for intercultural celebration in a world that is often depicted as divided and violent.
It's the ugly quite often that makes the news and gets the articles, and what sells. Beauty is something that really needs to be celebrated. We're pretty good at ugly, but we're also pretty good at beauty.
And Griffith's work has left a lasting impression in the community, from strangers and friends to peers and other professionals he inspires.
Jim is a visionary and a groundbreaker in ways that were so subtle, so simple, so intrinsic to the aesthetics and practices of everyday life that many people, I think, miss the radical edge that his propositions had.
What you have in Jim is a rare combination of ethnographers or anthropologists' keen eye for details and an abiding love of the people with whom he lives and curiosity about people with whom he doesn't live.
He's a gifted guy, brilliant, intellectual, self-effacing about that, and he won't own up to that, but he's a legend and he's iconic.
And he's also fun.
I think at one point in time in a story he told me while we were in Mexico together was that to do really good, you need to learn skills to be a folklorist, but to really meet people you have to be willing to belly up to the bar.
It's been a memorable trajectory for a kid who was born in Santa Barbara, California and grew up in Pasadena. After graduating from high school, Big Jim moved to Tucson in 1955 to study archaeology at the University of Arizona. However, he discovered an affinity for cultures and the border region, and the rest, as they say, is history. When he moved back to California for a few years to teach, Jim met Loma in 1961, and they were married 2 years later. Throughout the year, she has been a supportive and committed partner, even though she's usually off to the side somewhere while Jim is dealing with the functions or crowds.
Well, I introduce her either as my keeper, my parole officer, or my probation officer. I will say that she indeed is a keeper. And I will say that just about everything that I've been able to do, she's had a serious hand in.
And that teamwork has touched countless lives across international boundaries, socioeconomic backgrounds, and ethnicities. Griffith says his recipe is simple: appreciation, enjoyment, and respect for others.
I love getting people together, and I love talking about our regional culture. There was an old cowboy who lived in Clay Springs who once said, well, if there were any other place I'd rather be, I would have gone there. And I feel that way about Tucson. This is an exciting place to be. And the more I find out about it, the more exciting it gets.
Like what you see on Arizona Illustrated? Visit our webpage at azpm.org to watch and share videos from this episode. You'll also find stories from future programs, an easy way to submit your own story idea, an archive of past episodes of Arizona Illustrated, and you'll find everything you need to stay connected with public broadcasting in Southern Arizona. azpm.org. Each and every day as you stroll through your neighborhood, visit the grocery store, even at work, you may not realize it, but you are surrounded by people with extraordinary tales to tell. Stories like this one from a Green Valley resident whose sense of rhythm breathed life into a golden age of American music.
I was born in Westbrook, Maine, and it was during the Depression, and there were 7 of us, and we had nothing, literally nothing. And my dad worked 7 days a week, and he played C melody sax, and he always wanted to get a chance to play, but he couldn't because he had to put us kids. I decided then and there I was going to make something of my life. I was in the Navy during the Korean War. And I'm coming back after the Korean War, and I happen to be down in the mess deck, and I hear on the USO radio, this trumpet playing. I'm saying, who the heck is this? He was playing so melodically. I said, I've heard trumpet players play jazz, and I never heard anyone like this. So we waited around for 2 more songs to be played. He said, and he named off the tune. He said, that was a young trumpet player by the name of Chet Baker. And he played a tune called Imagination and the Lamp is Low. I said a prayer right there one day. I said, Lord, let me meet this man. 1 year later, I'd meet him. And I walked up to him and I said, hey, Chet, Art Frank, remember me? He said, no, I don't know you, man. My name is Art Frank, and I worked for many years with legendary icon trumpeter Chet Baker, as well as with many other people in New York City during the late 40s, early 50s. Guys like Charlie Parker, Bud Powell, One Night with Billie Holiday. Just put it this way, suffice to say, I work with just about anybody who was anybody in bebop, from 48 on to right now today, this very day. I allude to like I play like the rainbow, which is not solid colors, they're hues, and they disappear. I play like I breathe. Take a deep breath to reach the apex, you can not much. That's like breathing. When I first played with him, it was my lifelong dream. When I sat down in Hollywood at the Melody Room, Chet turned around to me and he said to me, Art, he talked like that, high voice, said, I leave a lot of spaces, Art. Just fill the spaces, man. That's the way I play today. He was the epitome of cool, man. I mean, he had no ego. He was very very introspective.
I saw you last night and got that old feeling.
He was a harp player. That's why everything he does, there's always a tinge of sadness in his playing. Even if he's doing up-tempo, you can hear that sadness in his playing.
Time after time,
I had dreams of making something so my father and mother, especially my father, could retire. And I promised my mother that if I made it, I'd buy her a house. And I never did. She died before I got the chance. But I never lost a drive. You know, I think I always wanted to do something so that they'd be remembered. Not for money, no, certainly not for fame, because it's nothing. I'm not a household name by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm known by a few big people. And that to me is being called making it. Having friends and loved ones, that's making it. That's true stardom. Yeah, that's bebop drumming.
Beginning in 1968, Tucson dealt with its rush hour traffic by turning the center lane of several streets into one-way lanes. Each weekday morning and again in the afternoon, these express lanes would ostensibly allow for more traffic where and when it was needed. But it's how those lanes appeared and vanished each day that's the focus of this installment of From the Vault.
I get up at 5.
And be to work by 6. Then we leave the shop about 25 after, be out there, get the cones all ready. Then we start putting them out.
6:45, we put them down. 8:45, we start picking up. We're usually off the road at 9.
Or a minute
right
or two
after.
after or something. But usually about 9. It's timing and rhythm, yeah. The speed on how fast you swing your arm to accord and how fast you're going.
He's the best one we've got.
About 4.5 miles we got to do, and you kind of wonder the first time you do it whether you're going to get it done in 15 minutes. We had the chair made so we can switch sides depending on whether we're picking up or putting down. That way traffic's never behind us.
There's a lot of people around here that, you know, enjoy us.
Yeah. There's a lot of people when we're putting out the cones, like mainly in the afternoon, they'll say, it's not 4 o'clock yet. You know, they'll tell me it's not 4 o'clock. I'm like, yeah, but it takes 15 minutes to put these cones on the road. You can't just start at 4 o'clock and have them down at 4 o'clock.
Also says no left turns when cones in place. It doesn't specify what time.
Yeah. Can do it at 30 miles an hour.
He can. 23 is my top. 30 picking up, 23 is top for putting down.
3:45 we start putting them down. Then 5:45 we start picking them up again. Then we're it for the day until the next day.
Thank you for joining us here on Arizona Illustrated. Next week, what it takes to be a rescuer, a community of voices, and shooting lightning. I'm Tom McNamara. See you next week.